Hi, Coach Tony here to do a Q&A with one of our coaches, Nathan Sudds. Nathan is an expert on coaching people with ADHD, among many things, and also one of our coaches who has taken advantage of coaching as a career that lets him travel all over the country, or not all over the country, all over the world. We're going to run this like all the other Q&As. We're going to go round robin, giving people a chance to ask Nathan questions, and if you run out of questions, you can just say pass, and I'll move on to the next person. Nathan, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm very good. It's great to be here. Thanks, Tony, for the opportunity, to connect with other coaches.
Great. No, these have been really fun to do. Cherry,
Yeah.
can I start with you? Do you have a question right off the bat?
Okay. So what are the challenges of coaching someone with ADHD?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And I think to try to answer that, to understand what it's like to have ADD it makes it easier for me, I think, in that sense. But most people with ADD deal with a lot of beating themselves up a lot about the problems that they have or the challenges that they face. And so I think when you're coaching someone with ADD, they tend to look like somebody who's not interested or maybe not engaged or not wanting to see change or things happen. And so you might misunderstand, how engaged or how interested they are by their actions. Like they're not getting things done, or they're not getting back to you, or they fall off the map or something. And so I think the biggest challenge with ADD is keeping that communication open and the non-judgmental sort of communication. And I think that's probably true in all coaching, but it's even more so with ADD coaching, because just because someone isn't doing something doesn't mean they don't want to or don't have a desire to do it. Sometimes the way that their ADD brings a challenge to them is what causes that, that disconnect sort of thing.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I just ask a clarifying question? What's the difference between ADD and ADHD?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I realized that.
That's a good question. And to be honest, right now, a lot of times you'll see people use it interchangeably, like ADHD, ADD. The more official sort of generalized term, because it's annoying to always say ADD, ADHD. A lot of people just generally use ADHD. The H is supposed to be a hyperactivity or a hyperactive component, right? So some people will say, I have ADD, I don't have the hyperactive part or something. But I think this distinction of if you don't know what ADD is, attention deficit disorder, which in my opinion is not a really great label. It comes from that mentality that there's something wrong with you. And I think the hyper part is another added, attention deficit disorder, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, right? Or something like that. I think ADD is more like a trait, or recognizing a pattern of behavior, or something to do with the way the brain or mind works. And so for me, ADD isn't as much of taking this label on that says, I have a problem, but more like a roadmap of okay, your brain works like this. How can I work with that now? So okay, this is how people with my kind of challenges get things done and accomplish things. And so I take it on with pride, but a lot of people take it on with sort of a very negative feeling, and they wish they didn't have it and all this. And I can understand that too, because it is a challenge, right?
Perfect. Gwen, can I pass it over to you?
Well, let's see. One of my questions is, how have you gotten a lot of your clients? Do they self-identify as ADD, or how do they come to you?
That's a good question. So funny thing is, I didn't actually have any ADD packages when I first started coaching on Coach Me. I was just doing meditation coaching, but in the story of what I shared about coaching on meditation, I mentioned my own ADD was sort of what brought me to the journey of meditation. trying to help myself, and maybe a bit of that in my own profile. And I found people signing up for meditation saying, I also have ADD, you know, and so yeah, they do self-identify, and actually a lot of people that I work with aren't even diagnosed as ADD, but they feel that like they have ADD. I think that's an important aspect, is that, you know, if you have ADD or not, if you can relate to the challenges, then, you know, you're a good candidate, you know, to work inside of the framework of what works for people with ADD, you know, because we all have these distractibilities, this procrastination or challenges with focus, even more so these days. Like one of the top people that kind of does research or does teaching or coaching on ADD, Ed Hallowell, he has a book called Crazy Busy, which kind of relates to this idea that, you know, in these times with how much email and all these inputs we have and everything, like everybody kind of exhibits some aspects of ADD because we just weren't built to handle this much input, you know, this much on our plate, you know, and it's just getting more and more where we have less downtime and more things that we have to do, you know. And so, like, how I got coaching in ADD, or how I got these clients in ADD, is really to do with that. Like, people feel crazy busy, they can't focus, they need to get things done, and they're wondering, how can I do that? So it's either meditation, or they hear, you know, they see that I coach on ADD and they're like, I can relate to the things you're saying, and so I want to work more closely with you on that.
Thanks.
Good. Michelle, pass it over to you.
Okay, I'm wondering, as far as how, or I guess what advice you give for other coaches, because, for example, now you're doing, correct me if I'm wrong, it's productivity for those with ADHD. Like, what implications would that have for, you know, those of us, like if you coach healthy eating, for example, or fitness, or, you know, organizational skills? Is there anything that we should keep in mind, you know, working, you know, if someone self-identifies, hey, in their, you know, welcome message response or anything like that, how can we kind of help each other to help the client, essentially?
Yeah, I think what I've learned, and I'm, you know, continuing to try to, you know, learn in this area, is that, and I think the Coach Me platform itself taught me a lot of this, and I think Cherry shared a bit of this as well. Like the habit coaching, people aren't necessarily going out looking for an ADD coach when they find me. They're looking for solutions for what they're dealing with, right? And maybe they've heard, you know, meditation is good habit to start to help with this thing with focus, you know, trying to be more calm and less stress and whatever. So I would say, like, one of the main things is to tap into sort of like, what are the habits, or what are the things that these people that you're trying to work with are looking to for their solutions, and then, you know, relate to that, you know, and I mean, there's different thinking on this, but like for me, I have never projected myself as someone who has it all together, who's figured it all out. I'm someone who struggles with the same thing they're struggling with, and I think that really resonates with my clients, like, because they're not looking for someone who's going to give them some theory that, you know, that they've learned in a book about how to work with AD. They want someone who's actually had this challenge and tackled it, and maybe still deals with it day to day, but like has found a way to enjoy life and be successful to some degree with that, you know? So I think when it comes to health and fitness and all these other things, you know, it's like, what are the things that those people that you want to work with will be gravitating to already? You know, get started with them on those small things, those small habits, and then, you know, work your way up to, you know, getting them to trust you with that, you know what you're doing and that you can help them. And then, you know, obviously it naturally from there, you know, continues. And I've shared a little bit before with some of the coaches that I oftentimes give like a call to someone who I see that we really connect and have a good fit, and I can help them. I give them a call to jump on and just talk through it, because I know that when I get on a call with them and I can talk to them, I can really, you know, help them even more. Digital coaching goes so far, and it can be a really good maintenance, and it can be a really good way to, like, you know, continue. But sometimes you just need that the deep dive to get them to the point where they recognize, like, I need this more intensely in my life, and so start with the habits, find the right ones, experiment a bit, because like I actually just added myself to productivity recently. Until recently, I was only in meditate, and that was it. So I added myself to set priority for the day, and that's a new experience for me, because the people coming through that way are much different than the people that are coming through the meditate one. And so I have to kind of learn what they're looking for and how to help them in a way that gets them to what they're looking for more quickly, because they're setting priorities, or someone else is trying to relax and maybe meditate, or even with, same with Tony's approach, like, sorry, this is a long answer, but, Tony's approach with heavy mental, which I think is an amazing thing. I've been following along with the new meditation section. Meditation is about being more productive and focused, but people don't necessarily come to it at first for that. They come to it for the stress relieving and the anxiety and the calm. And I try to show them that it can actually be a really useful tool to leverage to be more focused, be more proactive, and work, be aware of what you need to do. So, was that helpful? I hope so.
Sure. Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Nathan, I wonder if we get a little bit more explanation about what it means to self-diagnose as ADD. And I think if we were prescribing meditation, we would be really nervous about someone self-diagnosing. But here we're just talking about behaviors. So I think it's probably more normal and more okay for people to be coming in saying, I think I'm kind of ADD, and they don't mean it clinically necessarily. So
right.
What do people tend to mean if they've kind of given themselves a label like that?
Yeah, that's a good point, and I agree with you 100%. Like there's areas where you don't want to be going and getting medication for this ADD without knowing if you have it. And I don't even necessarily recommend medication as the first step, for ADD. Like if you feel like you have it, or if you self-diagnose, or if you are diagnosed, there are other paths to kind of explore before you go right into medication, depending on how how extreme this is for you, like what is it causing in your life. So, I mean, to self-diagnose or self-identify with it, a lot of times it's not just your like basic distractibility type thing. It's affecting their life in some major way, right? Like their work is suffering. Their boss might be like on their case about getting things done, and they're not able to, and they feel like stuck. It kind of ranges, right? There might be just the average person who feels like, hey, I can't focus long enough each day to work on this thing that I want to work on. It might not be work. It could just be a project of their own. Gretchen Rubin's stuff about obligers or whatever, like where you can't do stuff. ADDs have a really difficult time doing stuff that they do on their own. Like we're a little bit better when someone else's deadline is on the line, because there's this outside external pressure to us or whatever, right? But like we suck at doing our own things, and I don't remember which one of Gretchen's things is really directly connected to that, but this idea that if somebody else wants it, I'm eventually going to get there and get it done, but I get stressed out the whole way through. But coming back to that, sorry, go ahead.
She called it you're talking about obligers and upholders.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think like a lot of people have come to me through Coach Me because of that. They've read her book. They've identified like, hey, this is how I am, and how do I work with this? And so just coming back to how do they identify? They see this gap or this challenge. It could be focus related. It could be relationship related. Like the things that they aren't doing. Like I said at the beginning of the call. We'll look like we don't care or we look like we're not engaged, or we look like, these things aren't important to us, because we're not able to be as consistent in the way that, other people are. And we'll drop the ball a lot. Like we don't even trust ourselves, enough to make a commitment, next week or something, because, we're not sure if we can actually show up this week to get the things done that we need to deliver to that person next week. And so, until you have a system, or until you develop the skills to get past that, there's a lot of emotional, hurdles and anxiety. And, you know about this, like this emotional intelligence is oftentimes the biggest challenge with productivity than it is the actual productivity. Like it's the anxiety I feel about getting that task done that's more in the way than the actual task itself. Like I know how to do it. And, I maybe even, could get it done in 10, 15 minutes if I could get over the feeling of like, I'm stressed out about, the level of, what this needs to be done at. Like, I want to really do it perfect or something,
Good, thank you. Cherry, pass it over to you.
Not really got a question, but it just made me think that I wonder if a lot of people that we lose in those first few days could be, people who have those kind of issues, who are not feeling that they can stay the course. They're not feeling like they can make the commitment. They're just really nervous about that. So
yeah.
that's quite.
I think like when you deal with ADHD, I think you might see it everywhere. It's like it's like these things. But at the same time, like, I think this is the truth of the matter. Like, ADD is just like a heightened aspect of something that everybody deals with. I think and so there's some science on this that I really I won't get into because I don't understand it fully in that sense. But like, just the idea that our brain processes certain things differently. And there's, somebody asked me this question online too. There's many different types of ADD, so it's not always easy to spot. And sometimes it gets misdiagnosed as depression or something else because the person's actually depressed because of the ADD challenges, and they don't realize, so they get treated for depression, which doesn't really fully help them because they still have the underlying problem of ADD. And I've had several clients come to me that have just recently, at 50 years old, found out they had ADD and been like, wow, like, this is like, I mean, I could tell my own story just to say this. Like, I agree with you on that. Like we can probably benefit by seeing that some of these people have the same challenges, even if it's not ADD. It's this anxiety about whether I can follow through, or this like, my ADD is helping. I mean, I can see my ADD right now. Like, there's like 7 paths I want to go down in this conversation. I don't know which one to stay on course in this conversation, but like, we see these challenges, and we could probably help people by, non-judgmentally saying, like, some messages to them. Like, I've found that I brought people back by saying to them, hey, I haven't heard from you in a couple of days, but don't worry about it. That happens, and then they're like, yeah. They come back because they realize, hey, there's no judgment in that, And I think there's an important lesson there, is that, like, how do we feel when we've sent a message? I mean, when somebody sent us a message and we haven't gotten back to them in a few days, that's how that other person on the other end is probably feeling, and maybe exponentially so if they struggle with something like ADD, and they've probably dropped a million of these balls along the way. My own ADD coach said at one point, the idea is like kind of like mini PTSD. Like, we don't trust ourselves, and we have to go back out there tomorrow and do the same thing again that we don't trust ourselves to do, and then we failed yesterday and try all over again. It's like you kind of have this traumatic experience, and you have to sort of find a way to manage that, or to understand it enough so that you can get back up tomorrow and do the same thing and go at it again.
Good.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Gwen, can I pass it over to you? You're muted. Gwen, you're muted.
Sorry. I think this is really, you can hear me now?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is just such a fascinating conversation. And I'm wondering if we could go a little bit deeper into what Cherry was saying about what we as coaches could learn about preventing losing people early on in the interaction, and what you could teach us, Nathan, about the extreme empathy and non-judgmental response that you give, that you do right away. Is there anything, any advice you might give us for those initial 3 days where somebody is trialing, and this anxiety that might be coming up for people who either have or have not identified as ADD?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll say I'm not always the best person at this quick response stuff in the beginning, and so I've learned a lot of lessons on that one. Where like my ADD has gotten in the way of me getting back to someone quickly and whatever, and And I've been able to salvage quite a few relationships where in the beginning it didn't start off well because I was kind of slow to get engaged. And I think what people really want to see is that you care about them, right? It's not just like some profit center thing where you're making money or you're generating leads, but you truly care, you know? So I think if you engage in that way, and sometimes it's hard because people are unresponsive, and so it's hard to like really truly send a caring message when you have no idea who this person is. But you know, but this idea that, okay, on the other end, that person is a real person, and they've got fears potentially. And if you can figure out what those are in light of, you know, what you coach, it could be really helpful to say, you know, ask a question. Sometimes I've just realized that maybe what I've sent them is overwhelming. There's just too many messages. Like with ADD, you know, anything big, you know, can be sometimes overwhelming. And the initial reaction is avoidance, right? Because like it's like I just avoid that until I feel like I'm ready to handle it. And so I think sometimes as coaches we need to be careful if we're really excited in the beginning that we don't come off too strong, or that we like sort of lob it up, you know, easy for them in the first, you know, couple messages that they can quickly get back to us. Like I've had a couple people not respond, and I've just sent them a message say, hey, if you're too busy right now to send me to send me back answers, just say hey, so I know you're there. And that's helped. I've gotten people to kind of say, hey, I'm here, I'm just, you know, busy this week or whatever, and hey, cool, no problem, you know, like just get back to me when you can or something. And like anything we can do to disengage, I think, that anxiety and to connect with who's on the other end of this chat. You know, and I've kind of started to learn too that I can send a message, say, hey, I'm, you know, like I'm not going to be able to get back to you right now with the long message I'd like to, but just want you to know I saw your message. I'll get back to you. And that helps people to not feel anxious. Like they could be sitting there thinking they said something wrong, or that, you know, like the immediate reactions we have sometimes to stuff we don't get an answer on is like, did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? You know, do they think I'm not serious about this? Or, you know, who knows what that person on the other end is thinking? And so sometimes we just have to drop all the assumptions we have and just be open to realize that maybe on the other end, that person is not thinking all the things we think they are, or that they might have anxieties that are keeping them from getting back to us and stuff.
Great, thank you.
Michelle, on to you.
Yeah, I'm wondering with ADHD, you know, those challenges, that type of thing, is there anything unique that you're doing to advertise your services? You know, other than, of course, through Coach.me, or if you're doing social media ads or whatever, is there anything that has particularly worked for you given your area of expertise there?
To be honest, no. I'm trying to do some engagement, I think, and I can't really say for sure. I think a lot of my clients have come through Coach Me directly. You know, I have some that I've been able to engage and bring onto the platform, and but a lot of my people genuinely just come through the directory and through the network and start at the lowest level, you know, $15 or like the habit coaching, and then, you know, I work with them to try to get them what they need, you know. And I have done a lot of things that are not viable or sustainable in the beginning, which is like just, you know, really chat and help people on a level that is beyond habit coaching, you know, really. I don't send any copy paste messages, like other than the first automated message. That's the only one they get from me that's like not an actual like hand type message. And even that first message, I try to make sure that it's clear that that's the only one like that they're going to get. You know, sometimes I have it in the welcome message directly, or I just tell them in my next message, like, hey, you know, nice to virtually meet you or whatever. You know, that first message was just so we could get started as soon as you sign up, but that's the last one like that you're going to get from me or something. And I think people like appreciate that. But again, it goes back to care. Like, it doesn't matter if you have copy and paste messages if your messages are actually truly, you know, geared towards what they're asking for, what they need, right? So I'm just not really good at the copy and paste message. I tend to like bang out long messages and, you know, on the spot for individual people. But I will say that the best thing I've done for me personally, what I can tell is engage people to the point where I know that they're serious, and then offer them something like a free call or a longer chat. I don't know if anybody else is doing this right now, but I do scheduled chats sometimes with people where I'll be like, instead of giving them a call, I'll give them a chat where we jump on WhatsApp or something and we just chat for half an hour or something. And real time, being able to chat back and forth and see their reactions and make a response that's direct to that thing you're saying, also deepens the connection. You know, it's because it's like, and also like, not everybody's like this, but I love emojis and things. So I have like, and you guys might find this fun to experiment with. And Tony, I don't know how you feel about this, but anyways, we could talk about it. I set up a Bitmoji account, and I made, you know, I use a lot of the Bitmoji things with my coaching clients once we get really, you know, connected better. So like big thumbs up with like a, you know, emoji that looks like me, and, you know, and like silly stuff sometimes, just to keep that connection even on chat. You know, it feels more like we're, you know, we've got this connection, you know. So
I do have a context for the Bitmoji. It's the it has to do with the story the person is telling you. So or telling themselves. So there's like a market of people that are like hyper rational, and they just feel like if it doesn't scream science, then it can't be right. But, you know, all research and learning is that you have to hit someone at multiple levels. And so I used to work with a technical book publisher where all of the books were high quality but super dry. And then they put out this series, Head First, and it was like everything was written with brain science in mind. It had jokes, it had comics, and this is like learn to program kind of stuff. And that is way more effective. So what you're doing with the Bitmojis is definitely way more effective. It just, the only question is, does it play into the person's story that they're telling themselves?
Right.
I had a question though for you about.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I definitely think that it has to do with that. It has to do with that client. You definitely have to get a read on the client, because some people like feel like it's goofy and silly and it doesn't fit with what you're doing. But once I build that connection with the client and they get to know me, you know, they love it. You know, they freak out and then they go set their own up or something, and we send stuff back and forth, right? Yeah.
Right. Somewhere along the line, I've heard you say that like you've really learned to embrace your own ADD as a strength. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, how you see it as a strength.
Sure. Yeah. That's a good question. It's probably the most valuable point, and what connects a lot with the clients in the end too, for themselves. It's like, for me, it's a foundational thing, right? Until you accept the reality of what you have in front of you or what you're dealing with, then how do you build on it, right? Like you're building on a false reality. And so for me, accepting who I am the way I am and the ADD is a matter of saying, where are we at? Like, where are we really at? What are we working with, right? And I tell this story a lot, which is kind of a bit to do with acceptance and a bit to do with like helping us understand ADD. Like if you looked over and you saw some guy backing his Porsche or Lamborghini up to like a construction site and loading it up with lumber and like driving away with it, you'd be like, what is this, you know, idiot doing or whatever, you know? Like, look at this, you get your phone out, you start videoing it, you know, it's like, this is going to be viral for sure. You know, he's loading it up with lumber or construction or something, and then he drives away. But he can't drive away because the Lamborghini can never handle lumber, and so you just created this terrible mess and ruined an amazing car. And this is like ADD people trying to operate like regular people, right? And I'm not trying to say like, you know, we're Lamborghinis and you guys are like construction vehicles or something. It's not about that. It's just about recognizing that, okay, you're not built for this purpose, right? We're not like a guy that I used to listen to. He did a podcast years ago, and he would say, you know, we're not built to screw whatchamacallits on thingamajigs. Like it's just not something that we're good at. So like, it's hard to do things that are like, you know, regulated everyday things, but we're really good at problem solving, you know, thinking outside the box, being creative, you know, and that. So how do we find ways to make the things that we're not good at, you know, more, you know, handle themselves, and so we can focus on the things we are good at, you know. And sometimes that's with systems, or sometimes it's with just recognizing that you're not good at those things and having like safety nets in place, you know, like this thing can't fall apart completely because I've got this like fail-safe in place for myself. You know, a lot of ADD people will have like multiple alarms set or reminders, you know, and that's one way that people will deal with it. You know, it's like, you know, so, but for me, ADD is like a value. It's a benefit. Like, I don't look at it as being attention deficit. It's more like creativity, you know, focused, or, you know, problem solving skills or something. And we don't look at, you know, like math people, like creativity, you know, deficit disorder or something, you know what I mean? Like that person might be really good at accounting, and maybe they're actually creative in the accounting space, but like when it comes to art, we're not like, oh, they're art deficit disorder people or something, you know? And I think that gives me a new appreciation for the fact that like, we're just different, right? School, a lot of things aren't built for us, and that's the challenge, right? Like, so school is built for a very specific subset of people. Oh, got some echo going on there or something. You know, school is built for a very specific type of person, and we suck at that, and we're going to fail at that if it's built that way. And does that reflect poorly on us, or just the fact that it's not prepared for people that are of different types? And I think we know now that you know, learning that's built for people who learn differently, you know, they get it, and they succeed and they do really well. But when they're put in an environment that's built for, you know, people that aren't like them, then it's, you know, it's a challenge, right? They have to find, then they're stuck trying to find their own workarounds and their own ways to make things work. You know?
Perfect. Jerry, do you have any more questions?
Yes. A book? Can you recommend a good book on the subject that's not too difficult to read, but that would be helpful, maybe for a...
I should be able to, it feels like. There's quite a few good books, but it just depends on you know, what we're looking to learn. So like, I mean, there's some of the main ones that I would normally suggest might be something like Delivered from Distraction, or I think that's the name of the book from Ed Hallowell. He's like, his was one of the first books that I read where my mind, like, it's almost just like, you know, like my mind was blown when I read, I saw myself in those pages and realized what the challenge was that I was facing all these years that nobody had told me. Like, I didn't find out that I was ADD until I was about 28. And when I, you know, like, that's kind of a frustrating time to find out, but you know, I'm meeting people that found it when they're 50, you know, which is probably even more frustrating, right? And when I found out, it was like, it wasn't, some people have a different response to that. Some people are like, oh my God, like, this is terrible. And other people are like, oh, it's like the Matrix just was like, you know, like, it's suddenly you're like seeing everything, you know, you're seeing all the inner workings of everything and understanding it. And that was kind of my feeling. So that book, Delivered from Distraction, is good. On a technical level, like, I could probably post some books in the chat or something, or in the comments or something for people. But
well, that sounds good.
I'm trying to think of the name of some of the other books. But there's some really good books for the person who's actually ADD, but there's also books for people who are, you know, in relationship with someone who has ADD. And I think support groups even are really helpful for people who don't have it, but have people in their life that have it, because, you know, seeing that it's, you know, seeing the pattern for me when I went to a support group the first time and I saw like everybody telling their story, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this could be my story, each one of these people, you know, in a different level, but the way they handled it was not necessarily always the same. And some, anyways, that I could go way down that rabbit hole, but like, you know, I think learning about it's awesome that you're interested. I think, you know, if more people, especially if they have these kinds, like these people that deal with this in their life, definitely read about it and understand it, because even when you read about it and understand it, you'll still have a hard time dealing with it, because if you've ever dealt with anything like Alzheimer's, someone with Alzheimer's, like, even when you understand that they don't remember the thing that just happened, you it's still frustrating for you because it's like you can't fathom the idea that person can't understand that, and so you have to, like, it's very difficult not to get upset with the person, and you really have to work through those issues. And it's very much like that with ADD because, my wife will say something, and I'll be like, yeah. And then like a couple minutes later, like, there's a good example. I'll say, you want some tea? And she'll say, yeah, that sounds good. And then I put the teapot on and it's boiling. And then I go back to what I'm doing and I totally forget about the tea. And then she's like, that tea was great. And I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot the tea again. And we'll run over there and go finish it, So we found funny ways to deal with those challenges.
Great. Gwen, how about you? Anything more?
I'll pass.
Michelle, how about you?
Pass.
Herbie, you showed up late. We're going round robin, asking for, giving people chances to ask questions of Nathan. A question for him?
No, I don't have anything. I'm just trying to eavesdrop a little bit and catch up.
Perfect.
Cool.
Nathan, maybe we'll switch a little bit to the coaching lifestyle. What an amazing career that you can do from almost anywhere in the world.
Yes. Thank you, by the way, Tony, for making that more possible too.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty amazing. Like, I think coaching, we really have to tap into it, and make it work because it's worth it. Like it gives you the freedom, just online, especially online, with Skype or Zoom or Facebook or WhatsApp messengers, all these things that we can do with the calls, and then have Coach Me to build in the client base is amazing. Like I've been on phone calls and like I have a picture on my Facebook somewhere profile from Indonesia where I'm standing in front of a temple in Indonesia talking on the phone to a client, one of my Coach Me clients, coaching him while my wife walks around the temple and explores, and I'm like telling him, I'm standing in Bali in front of this temple in Indonesia right now, and he's totally cool with it. He loves it, and he loves telling people like his coaches, in Bali or traveling or whatever, and I got lots of stories about that, but like just the lifestyle is very convenient, just to be able to tap in wherever you are, connect with your clients and help them move forward, and it gives them the value they need. It gives me the freedom that I need. I love it.
Did you find when you were traveling in Asia, you were able to get data plans that made coaching like possible? Yeah,
almost every country I've been in. There's been a couple countries where it was a little bit more challenging to like until I figured it out, but like data plans generally are very cheap over there, and so like I did almost all my phone coaching or my Skype coaching on a mobile data plan just because it was more stable than the Wi-Fi connections in most places. And so, $10 for the month, I have a 5 gig plan or something in like Thailand, for example. Actually my last time I was there, I think it was $20. I had an unlimited data plan. So it was nothing. I could connect anything to it and do whatever I wanted. No problem. And here in Greece, I just got Shrisa connection, a 10 gig plan for, 10 euros, which is maybe like 15 US or 12, I don't know, 14 US or something. So yeah, it's definitely possible. And there's the snags here and there where things drop out. I'm assuming it might happen right now just because we're talking about it.
So that gives me an idea for another question. Nathan, so considering, part of the purpose of this call is to help other coaches get to know you so they might refer clients to you, given that you are international, are there any kind of limitations on your availability because of time zones or whatever? Yeah. Or where are most of your clients?
Yeah, good question. Really good question. I think the general answer is no. Like, there's no limitations because I'm traveling, I generally find a section of time zone that overlaps and works for most people. I haven't had much of a challenge, going between Asia and India and Thailand. Malaysia, India, Thailand, and then even here in Greece. It's just, for me, it's more of an adjustment than it is for them. There's a couple clients that I had to shift the times we met because it would have been 4 a.m. here in Greece, for example. But for the most part, it was like drag and drop. I showed up in Greece and all my coaching clients were all the same. just instead of being at 9 or 10 p.m., it was at 6 or 5 or 6 in the afternoon. So not a big deal. But one client who I met with at a certain time, it ended up being 4 in the morning, and I just shifted with her that around. And most people are pretty understanding about it. You know, if it ever got to be a problem, I think there's enough coaches on CoachMe that I can find someone else to like refer them to easily. You know, like Chris Watkins or Chris Waterguy, you know, he does ADHD coaching, and he's in the UK, I mean in Australia, so he has a little different time zone than me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. But yeah, I haven't really had to do that, so that's been nice. I would. Oh, sorry. I was going to jump in and just say, like, ask myself a couple questions, because there's a couple things that we didn't really talk about that I would like to share about ADHD, and it's that, like, there's a lot of, if you're dealing with anyone or you know anyone, like a lot of the things I do are natural, you know, solutions like supplements, exercise, you know, meditation is one of them. And I think that's an important part of like understanding where the challenges are and helping people. For me, has been like tapping into that. Also giving them the permission to sort of like drop the ball and experiment. Like my whole approach is life is an experiment. And so I come to them with this idea that, hey, let's experiment with these things. It gives them a bit more freedom to not feel like they have to have it all together or get it exactly right. And you know, then the things that I bring to them, like supplements, meditation, exercise, these are to help them to create the environment that will make it more, you know, possible to be successful in those things. And so, you know, I come back to this experiment thing a lot because a lot of ADD people, strangely enough, have a perfectionist mentality, you know, but we deal with like the inability to be perfect. So maybe that's why we want it so badly, because we see other people as having it a lot more together than ourselves. And so, you know, this is an element of having to, like, you know, like how I feel anyways, is really help people, give them the permission to not be perfect, you know, and it's amazing how much they just, like, you know, they settle in, you know, to coaching with this permission that like, hey, we're here in this together, we're working on this together, and like, you can't let me down, you know, in this sense, like, and that might be different in different genres of coaching, I don't know, but like, for me, it's like, we're in this together, like, stay connected with me, you know, and yeah, there's some things I expect from them, but at the same time, like, it's going to be like with a level of like understanding, you know.
We might be at the raise your hand point of this meeting. Cherry, Michelle, do you have you think you're going to have anything more for Nathan?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I might be about at the end too. Gwen, are you at the end?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Nathan, anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't want to go on, but I just say that if you're looking to refer people to me, I like challenging cases, you know. This is what I'll say. Like, I like people who maybe seem a little challenging or haven't, you know, aren't pulling their weight in the coaching relationship. And because I recognize that that's one of the indicators of people who struggle with the kinds of things that I struggle with. And a lot of why I love coaching and why I got into it or wanted to get into it is because of, like, giving back, because what I've learned that's helped me makes me feel a lot better about myself. And I think this is the one of the things that my coaching can bring to people like me, is that, like, you know, this connection. Like, a lot of times I sit down with people and I can almost like read their mail, in the sense of I understand what they're going through. And so they'll say something and I'll go, oh, cause this, and they go, whoa, like, you know, most people don't understand us. And so we live in a world of like totally being misunderstood all the time. So
Yeah.
that, Tony, goes back to your point about acceptance, like, not only, you know, accepting myself and my own ADD, but like meeting someone who understands what you're going through, it can really do a lot for your, you know, your growth, right? So.
Perfect. I think that's the perfect bow that you've tied on the Q&A. Nathan, thank you so much. I think we learned a lot. Sherry, Gwen, Michelle, Kirby, thank you for being the Q&A team today.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.